Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. Obviously, we got in yesterday. It's been 7 months since we got the knock on the door. It's been an incredible ride so far. Tons of fun. It's it's overwhelming for sure, but this thing's giving me a little feedback. Sorry, but yeah, it's been absolutely incredible. Just getting here yesterday and meeting the fans at the hotel and all the signage on the wall. You know, this is obviously a dream come true. I've always dreamt of, as a kid, just playing in the National Football League and trying to help your team win games, and then all of a sudden, after a long career, getting that knock on the door and being here and thinking that, like you said, 387 of us get the honor to put on this jacket, and man, I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm nervous for my speech a little bit, but it's going to be a great time. Absolutely.
You just come from the golf course?
I wish I had time.
Chris Hagan, Fox 59, Indianapolis. Just got a couple for you. One, when you were playing with New England and with the Colts, you were surrounded by greatness and guys you probably figured were Hall of Famers. At any point, did you figure, hey, I'm doing something special here, even when you stacked up all the years, or was it something you look back on maybe now that you're done?
You know, I really never thought about it too much when I was playing. I was always kind of had blinders on and was always looking forward my entire career. Like, what can I do to be better? What can I do to help the team? How can we get our team to the next level? Or how can we maintain a championship type of caliber in the locker room? So, you know, maybe after a couple of the game-winning Super Bowls, you know, you start hearing people talk about it like, hey, you know, you've done some great things. And, you know, you meet a guy like Chris Berman who says, man, you're gonna get in, you know, and then I guess in the back of your mind, you hope that that's maybe a possibility later on, but you know, every year I felt like I needed to put a new chapter in my book, an exclamation point on my career. And early in my career, I remember playing against Morton Anderson, and I believe he was in Atlanta at the time, and I was just a few years in the league, and I was so awestruck just being on the same field with him and you know, just admiring his career and the amount of points. And I just said, you know, like I said, I was dumbfounded. I just sat there and said, like, nobody's ever going to touch your records, right? Like, it's so far out there, 25 years. I'm like, there's no way. And then, you know, obviously leaving New England after 10 seasons and going to the Colts, I just kept putting years together, stacking years, and I was so very fortunate to play on two amazing organizations with, like you said, Hall of Fame caliber guys, right? I mean, when it's all done and said, both of the organizations are going to have lots of guys that have gold jackets. So in my mind, it was just such a blessing. And you know, once we finally got toward the end of the career, and I was looking at it going, hey, you know, Morton's record's out there, and it's a few years away if I can stay healthy. You know, that became, you're always wanting to win championships. You're always wanting to you know, host the Lombardi Trophy. But at that point, I was like, maybe I can catch him. And at that point, I think that maybe was the one time once we were in Oakland and I kicked that chip shot field goal and surpassed his all-time leading scorer record. At that point, I thought there was a real good chance, but I never took it for granted. I never thought that it was a sure thing. You know, there's so many great players. You know, every year they make the list of the guys that are nominated for the Hall of Fame, and I'm dumbfounded on how they can figure out how you can whittle it down to 4, 5, 6 guys. You know, I'm just because there's so many guys that are worthy of that. So. Yeah, you know, I never wanted to assume anything until I got the knock on the door and I opened up the door. And then if any of you guys saw that, the tidal wave of emotion that came over my face, because then it became real. You know, I knew it was either the year before, you know, the first time that I got nominated, I got that phone call that said, sorry, man, you made the finals, but you didn't make the final cut, you know. So, yeah, you know, you never ever take it for granted, for sure. And at that point, when I got the knock on the door, it was kind of almost waterworks. I was trying to hide them, but I don't think I got away with it.
You mentioned New England, and it's not unusual for a player to leave one team for another, but at that moment in time, what the Patriots and Colts were to each other as rivals Could you just talk us through a little bit about how that transpired, and obviously it worked out very well for you. You go get another Super Bowl.
Yeah, all the respect in the world for the New England Patriots. I loved playing there. I loved being a teammate there. We had world-class athletes, and you know, when you win a bunch of Super Bowls, it's a lot of fun. But I played 10 years there and never saw free agency, and I was fine with that, right? But at that point, I knew I was still young enough to play a long time, and I thought I put enough together that I was hoping that they wanted to keep me around for a long time, and the contract was not really there, and the Colts did everything right. I mean, Bill Polian, who was putting my gold jacket on me on Friday night, he said, "We want you here, and we'll do whatever it takes to get you here," and it was a huge honor, and I had all the respect in the world for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, they were the toughest team that we always faced at the end of the playoffs, and it was either them or us going to the Super Bowl. When I say us, I was still in New England at the time, obviously, and so I knew they were a great team. I knew what Peyton and Marv and Reg and Dwight and you know, I mean, they just had so many studs on their team. So when he called, I was like, I wouldn't want to leave a great organization and just go anywhere. It had to be the right place, and it was the right place. I have absolutely no regrets. It's a wonderful 14 years that I played there. Couldn't have asked for anything more, and it was truly magical getting there and winning the Super Bowl the first year that I was there. You know, helping be a small part in getting over the hurdle and hosting the Lombardi Trophy. That was amazing.
Adam, congratulations. Dave Bordelweg with South Dakota News Media Association.
All right.
Hey, you had a terrific career at South Dakota State University playing for the Jackrabbits as both a place kicker and a punter, but you had some challenges along the way as well when you were in college. Can you talk about when you're finishing college, coming out of college, how was it that you had that dream to get to the NFL? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, all of us progress in a certain way. I was a solid punter and kicker, but I wasn't. I needed a little work still. I mean, I think that's the major thing that, you know, some of the young kids, high school kids or college kids, and I always tell them, I'm like, listen, my skill level developed not only through high school and college, but even in the National Football League. I became more consistent. Probably mentally I became better as we went along, and you know, I was fortunate enough when I was there, a gentleman by the name of Adam Timmerman was getting drafted by the Green Bay Packers, so we had a lot of scouts there, and they always were checking him out. I mean, that's why they were there, but they were talking to me a little bit, so I got a little extra love, I guess, at that point. And obviously I did not get drafted, but I did talk to a handful of teams, and I knew I was maybe being naive. I thought I was closer than maybe I was. But I moved to Virginia. Well, let me back up a second. Brian Hansen, who was the punter for the New York Jets at the time, was a South Dakota guy as well, and I met up with him. We worked out. He introduced me to a kicking coach by the name of Doug Blevins, who was a handicapped gentleman in a wheelchair and lived in Abingdon, Virginia. I moved there, worked with him for a season, and then the Amsterdam Admirals drafted me, and I spent one season in NFL Europe, and it was the greatest decision of my life. It was a great time. I enjoyed Europe. I enjoyed playing at that level, and it was my first opportunity to play professional football, right? A schedule that's just football and not school and football, and I believe that really, really helped me along the way. New England saw me there, offered me a contract, and the rest is history, as you say. So yeah, I really appreciate coming from South Dakota, playing at South Dakota State. I appreciate the struggle that I had to get there. I think I can appreciate, not to say that the superstar guys that came right out of college, you know, the number one draft choices didn't have a struggle, but I think my journey was a little different than some, but I think that's what made it so much more rewarding and so much more fulfilling to me.
Hey, Adam, congrats. Corey Kuffler with WQAD out of the Quad Cities. I know you've had some interactions with the rest of the class. Specifically, I want to ask you about Roger Craig. What have your interactions been with him? What does it mean to have him part of this class?
Oh, I love Roger. He is an incredible man. He's always got a smile on his face. The thing that I love the most about Roger is when you see him, he just gives you a hug, and he's got a smile on his face, and he is so thankful. I think we're all super thankful that we're here, but you know, he just brightens the day when you're around him, and he's obviously the veteran in our group, if you will. He played before us, but I remember watching him, you know, back in the day when Montana to Rice and Craig and this and that, like I didn't play running back, but utmost respect for him. I think he was one of the first guys to go 1,000 and 1,000, right? So, I mean, that's very, very not impossible, but very, very hard to do, right? So he's a wonderful man and well overdue, and I'm just so happy that he's part of our class. I can't say enough how honored I am, not only to be in the Hall of Fame, but this class is amazing. Like, every one of the guys, you know, are just class acts, just pros. I mean, man, I love the class, and I'm just so honored because being part of this fraternity and this group of men is just something in itself. But to be with these other four gentlemen and knowing that I get to be around these guys the rest of my life is pretty awesome.
Adam, congratulations. Nathan Brown, USA Today. I know you mentioned earlier the importance of catching Mort and his record. The longevity of your career in general, what did that mean to you to just have such a long, consistent, successful career that you had?
Yeah, I think maybe that's even more than any individual moment. I think the longevity part is the thing that I'm probably the most proud of, because it's so difficult to keep yourself at a high level for a long time. If you play football, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how often you're going to have an injury or you're going to have to go through stuff. And I was blessed to have some very, very important people in my life that helped me stay healthy, that guided me in the right way. And I think I met some people early in my career that taught me to take care of your body, eat right, sleep, all the little things. And this is the things that I tell my high school kids when I'm coaching them. I'm like, you know, optimize yourself the best possible, because 1%, one little thing could turn out to be a big thing later on. And, you know, you think kickers, you know, we don't make a lot of tackles or this or that, but I've had numerous surgeries like everybody else just from wear and tear just over years. So I think the longevity part is the one thing that I'm the most proud of, because it's one thing to get to the NFL. It's another thing to be able to perform well enough to stay there for a long time. And even our position in particular, you're a guy that better be 80-some% every single year, or they're looking to replace you, right? You know, you have not even one bad year, one bad game, and all of a sudden they're thinking, man, you know, should we do something else? So to be able to focus in and day out, week in and week out, and put your best foot out there and be able to perform every week and every year. And I think for me, one of my things that I always try to do is at the end of the season, I would look back on my season, I'd critique, like, what can I do better? How can I be the best player possible to help my team win games? And that's really what I strive to do. And I think the older you get, it's one thing, you know, when you're in your 20s, it's pretty easy to keep your body fat down and your weight where you need to be, and it's easy to lift and do all that to keep your body going. But when you hit, you know, 40 plus years old, it becomes much more difficult, and so it becomes much more work to stay at that level. So I think that's the thing that I'm really, really proud of, just to be able to maintain that. And although my last season I was dealing with a few injuries and stuff, and it wasn't statistically my best year, but some of my best years were toward the end of my career, and pretty proud of that, to be honest with you.
And I know you selected to have Carly Ursay-Gordon introduce you on Saturday. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship and the Ursay family and what they meant to you in your career in general?
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful family. You know, I only played for 2 organizations, so I can't speak through the other 32 organizations out there, but a little bit of this is in my speech, so I'm not gonna give it all. But they love their team. They'll do anything they can to help make sure that we're successful. Jim was a rock star. Loved the guy. He would do anything for anybody at any time, and just such a family guy and loved his daughters, loved his team. He was grassroots guy, right? He always told the stories that when he was a young kid, he was in the locker room picking up socks and jocks and doing the equipment guy stuff to start with, because he needed to figure out, like, he needed to see it at the grassroots. And I appreciate that, because you're the owner of a team, but there's nothing too big or too small that you wouldn't do to be right there where it needs to be. So I'm really, really proud of the Ursay girls and how they're honoring their father. Carly, you know, she's been in the locker room. She's been in meetings. She's on the sideline with the headset, and she's hearing the plays. Like, she didn't want to just be an owner. She wanted to understand what was going on. She wanted to know the plays and what's going. You know, she felt like she needed to know all of the assets of football to understand what's going on, and I respect the heck out of that for her doing that. Again, we've had a lot of conversations over the past few years, and I really respect her. And you know, NFL football ownership is kind of the old boys club, if you will, but she's taken the bull by the horns, and she's doing a wonderful job, and I couldn't be more proud of her.
University of Akron. I wanted to talk about your teammate, Pat McAfee. I say he's definitely a funny guy, but he's the king of like storytelling. One of my favorite stories is he got drafted to be your holder, and he never held for a kicker in his life. How is that from your perspective?
Yeah, I've heard him tell the story, and it's about 99% true, honestly. I mean, everybody sits there and goes, oh, that's got to be embellished. It's not. The first time I met him, he came in, oh man, what an honor to be around you. Yeah, you know, hopefully you're not mad at me, but I lied to Bill Polian before I got drafted and told him that I've never held a day in my life. And I think my heart sank, and I was just like, holy cow. Like, now all of a sudden in the middle of my career, you're like, hey kid, I'm trying to do some good stuff here, and like, you're lying to the GM, and now I got to deal with a dude that's never done it before. We're starting from day one scratch. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it made me really nervous, but yeah, one of the first things I did, I said, all right, handed him a plane ticket, flew out to a guy by the name of Ken Walters, who was my holder a bunch of years in New England. He held for me for the 2 Super Bowl kicks. Love Kenny. He taught me a little bit about kicking, because he taught me the lean of the ball can affect the flight of the ball. Like he's just like, I'm gonna get it there for you, dude. I'm gonna make your job as easy as possible. So I knew that there was absolutely nobody else that needed to help Pat other than that. So I said, you're going there for 4 days. You're gonna just soak in all the knowledge. And Kenny's. And I called Kenny first, and I was like, hey man, you mind? And he's like, absolutely, anything for you, bud. So Pat flew out there. He did it, and to Pat's credit, you know, he's a funny guy. He's the jokester of the world. Like, I love the man. He's a very hard worker, and he takes things very serious. And we always had tons of fun on the practice field, in the games. The stuff that he would be yelling across the field to the other dudes, I'm like, oh my God, you're gonna get us in trouble. But he took it very seriously. And when he said, you know, Vinny would throw me 500 balls in my room at night before we'd go to bed in training camp, that was real. I'm sure I wore him out, right? I mean, he just was probably like, oh my gosh, but I wanted to make sure he understood how important it was, and he knew. I mean, he absolutely knew, and he did a great job. And you know, there may be a few times where it's a tough snap or it's not a perfect hold, but I tell you what, he did an unbelievable job. He became one of my favorite guys, and yeah, he just all the respect in the world to him and Kenny for helping him out. But Pat, he's a funny dude, but when he puts his mind to something, he can do damn near anything.
Hi, Antonio Rossetti from the West Coast Gazette. Congratulations, by the way. I really just wanted to ask, like, how much does it mean to you to have your family out here this weekend too, and how important has family support been for your 24 years?
Oh, it's absolutely incredible, and I'll touch a bunch on that during my speech. So again, you guys keep asking me stuff, and boom, it pulls right into the stuff that I've been thinking about these last few months and trying to put into a speech or onto paper, thinking about what that means. But you're absolutely right. From my childhood, growing up as a kid, all the way through the support my wife gave me and my children, I mean, they're my why. honestly. I mean, I love football. I love everything about it. I love running out onto the field, but they're the reason why I did and did as much as I did. You know, the love of the game, the love of football is obviously there, but couldn't have done it without, you know, people have to know, obviously, we can't make it to this stage or have a gold jacket on without a help of a ton of people. And my support cast, my parents, my siblings, my wife and kids, and coaches and teachers. I mean, there's so many people out there that I definitely could not and would not be here today without them. You bet.
Hey, Adam, congratulations. Troy Davis from Spotlight News and YSN. Just talk to us a little bit about how a great football player like you that also kicks prepares himself mentally in those closing seconds of the games and those such big kicks that you had where you won games or put them into overtime, that kind of thing. What's going through your mind as everybody's out there on the field and you're preparing for that kick?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, you know, as a kid, I always played sports, and I played multiple sports year-round: soccer, football, wrestling, baseball. In every sport that I played in, I always wanted to be right in the middle of the action, right? So center, midfield in soccer. I was a catcher in baseball. Played quarterback also in football because I wanted the game to come down to if I knew I was going to work hard, and I trusted the fact that I hoped that the game was going to be dictated on my play, because it was one of those things I've heard Kobe Bryant talk about. He's like, I trust me because I know what effort and what I've done to get to the point that I'm at. So in my mind, I just always wanted to be around the ball, or to be one of the reasons that we were successful, or maybe that we lost because I didn't play well enough, but I knew that I would put the effort in. So I guess to answer your question, what I enjoyed pressure, I guess. Jeff Saturday was one of my teammates in training camp. He always said, man, I wish I was a kicker, except for on Sundays, because he didn't want that, right? And I guess so you have to kind of embrace that as this position. You have to say, I know that there's going to be numerous games that are going to come down to my foot, win or lose, and I didn't make them all. I made most of them, but I didn't make them all, obviously. But you know, that's one of the things that you couldn't shy away from. People used to love to ask me, hey, would you rather have a game-winning kick? And I'm just like, no, I'd rather win by 35 points. You know, fourth quarter, I'm waving to my family in the crowd, drinking Gatorade. There's no stress, right? But on the retrospect, if it's coming down to a game-winning kick, I absolutely wanted it to be me rather than I'm sitting on the sideline hoping that the other kicker misses, because I have no control in that, right? So I just always felt like if you could zone in and block out all of the noise, and just, like I tell kids that are kickers, I said, just rely on your little 3-yard box, right? You can't block for the guys up front. You can't snap the ball. The only thing that you can do is when the ball gets snapped and the ball gets placed, you can control your little window. It doesn't matter who's yelling, what the game means, what's on the line. And for me, that helped kind of calm my mind a little bit, you know. And then it really always just came down to the process, right? Trust your process, right? Super Bowl kick in Super Bowl 31, 48-yarder against the Rams. I knew when I got out onto the field, I'm like, you've kicked this kick 10,000 times in the past, right? Nothing changes other than the pressure that you put onto yourself. Rely on your technique and trust your process. And thankfully, when I looked up, it was dead center, and I'm running on the sideline cheering. So I think that's what helped me. I love the Mariano. I'm a Red Sox fan, but Mariano Rivera, the Sandman, he was the dude, right? Because every time he walked onto the field, it was like, boom, they're going to win, right? Michael Jordan didn't make every shot, but he wanted it, and most of the time he made it. So by no means am I comparing myself to those greats, but I just loved people who didn't shy away from the pressure. They're like, I wanted the game to come down to me because I'm going to win this sucker. You bet.